Joe, we were supposed to do this in our last episode, but because we were arguing about USC so much, we couldn't get to it. But now we go out to Arizona. We talk about the Arizona Wildcats. I'll kick it over to you first. Look, a lot of changes have come to Arizona. Your thoughts on the Wildcats?
Yes, I was not super excited about the Brennan hire. I think he's a fine G5 coach. His record does not really indicate a guy that you're going to be super excited about leading your football program. I think the timing of it made it a bit difficult for them on their options that they had when Jed Fish left to go to Washington. They have some elite premier talent in Noah Fifita, in Teteroa McMillan, in Jonah Savanea, who is going to be playing tackle for them this upcoming year, who is a very, very gifted tackle prospect. Takario Davis out at corner, 6'4". He can move. He is going to be one of the best cornerbacks, if not the best cornerback in the Big 12. Those guys will get picked early in the 2025 NFL draft, and those guys will help them win important games on their schedule. But I am, Blake, not optimistic that they will last the whole season. And if you look at what happened to them in the transfer portal, it really sucks, man. It really sucks that their guy left and took a bunch of kids with him. They had 20 guys leave the program. They didn't lose the premier players. We thought that Fifita and McMillan would leave. They didn't lose them. So they're going to be fine at those positions. But I'm worried about their depth. I'm worried about what happens later on in the season when guys start to get hurt, when you need guys to fill in. I don't know what their depth looks like. I'm not saying I know that for a fact that they're going to be screwed, Blake, but I just don't know how I feel. Losing 20 guys. That's a lot of roster shuffling.
You know, teams that normally lose that many guys historically either are really good or really bad because they're bringing in a lot of people too. Here's where I am with them. I'm with you. I have no idea what they're going to be. I know of 3 dudes that I know that can play. I will tell you this. I went and looked this up today because I was like, I knew that you were going to come in here and say that you hated the Brennan hire. So I'm like, all right, well, you know what? I don't know enough about him. I need to go, like, statistically, schematically, I need to go find out more about them. Joe, everywhere they've been, they've run the football down people's throats, though, regardless of what conference, regardless of where they're at. And by the way, he's brought a running back with him. The question becomes is, Joe, I have no idea what they are on their defense. I have no idea what they're on their defensive line. And Arizona fans are going to be like, I know they're going to be in the comments saying, we got this guy, we got that guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. It doesn't matter because those guys, like you just mentioned, you need depth. And I don't think that they have it. Now, I look at them, Joe, and say to myself, I could see a world in the first month and a half. They either are going to really be competitive and be like 3 or 4-1, 5-1, or Joe, it's going to really turn bad. You got Kansas State in September at Kansas State. You got at Utah. You got Texas Tech, who, by the way, we are a Texas Tech fan account now. We will always root on the Red Raiders after they showed us love. So
yeah, we never really talked about that, by the way. They put us in their hype video. Someone commented, it's a side note, someone commented last week when we talked about Oklahoma and was like, why do you guys keep talking about you guys getting clipped? Like no one ever else mentions this, like basically implying that we were being pompous for implying that people get upset over. And I almost commented back.
Everybody talks about themselves getting clipped.
Yes. And I almost responded, but I was like, I'm not going to do this. I almost said, go look at the Texas Tech hype video that they just put out. What, like, our quotes get pulled, good or bad. It happens once a month.
By the way, the person that so I was driving to Atlanta the day that came out.
Yes, I remember when you texted it.
The person that texted it to me is the biggest college football media account in the country.
Is it paid to text you?
So stop! Don't you dare tell me that it's not a big deal for people. Getting back to the point, Joe, they got to go to BYU. I mean, when the Mormons
that's as dangerous of a game as
when the Mormons get rumbling, it's a trap game. Oh, by the way, you God forbid you don't know what you're doing defensively and you don't have the depth, by October 19th when you face Colorado, look, we talk a lot of shit about Colorado on the show. You know what? One thing we don't talk shit about them, how good they've been offensively. They can score points. I just think that Fifita and McMillan are going to have to go off, Joe. I mean, I really think but I do think that something that is being slept on is how effective I think that they're going to run the football. You talked about their tackle that may be pretty good. I don't know, Joe, if they're not going to run the football pretty effectively. Brennan, you got to give Brennan this. I went to a decade's worth of history. Everywhere he's gone, okay, the run game or stopping the run is definitely changed. Let me give you an example. San Jose State was last in their conference in rushing yards and allowing rushing yards. So dead last in running the football, dead last in stopping the football. He gets there, they turn into number one on both sides of the football. The things that I think that he does in his principles and philosophies might help out Fifita. I think that he is a hard-nosed coach. And Joe, you know what else is interesting? What did he do and what did he convince those guys in McMillan, Fifita not to leave? What was he saying behind the scenes, and what was the schematics behind the scenes for them not to leave?
I think that had less to do with him and more to just do with the fact that they wanted to.
I'm
going to get killed for that one, but you literally just wanted to stick and finish what they started. I think that was probably the most of it.
You really believe that McMillan didn't get it when Fish went to Washington?
Oh yeah, they absolutely were probably pursued by people to leave, and then Fish probably propositioned them. I mean, it was vaguely reported on when all that was happening that people thought that they were going to end up flipping and going to Washington. All I'm saying is I just think that it had less to do with Brennan and more to do with that they didn't want to abandon the school that they started their careers at, and they wanted to finish what they started. I think that's what it was. That was the way I read into it.
I don't know. Joe, I can see them being a high productive team. Okay, I could see them falling flat on their ass.
The way I see it, I think it's pretty easy to project based on what I've talked about. Actually, I wouldn't call it easy. It's easy to illustrate. I think that they started the season really hot. I think that McMillan ends up having a really amazing start to the season because he is an athletic freak. He is enormous jump ball guy. He's going to make some crazy plays. Fifita is going to be clicking the way that we saw him click at the end of the season. And then the injuries are starting to start to hit. I'm not saying that they're going to suffer a ridiculous amount, but just the general wear and tear that happens to college football teams by the time you get to middle to the end of October, and we're going to really find out how deep they are. If the depth isn't an issue and Brennan knows how to work around it, they can maintain their trajectory. They can finish 9-3, maybe even better than that. But if the attrition of the season hits them, I think that 8-4 is probably the most realistic projection because their schedule's not terrible.
Well, then who do you expect them to upset then? Because they'll have to upset somebody.
Well, their schedule's not that. Their 3 hardest games. I wrote down 4 hard games.
All
Kansas State, they don't beat. I think the Kansas State beats them. Utah beats them. Colorado's a coin flip based on health situation. And West Virginia is always a tough game.
By the way, did you see the West Virginia people already starting to get pissed off at you because you threw shade at Neil Brown?
I don't even remember what I said. I just say shit.
Because the last episode I said, or 2 episodes ago, I forget the team. Oh, I think it was Kansas State, and I said you dismissed the Kansas State versus West Virginia game, and I said don't do that because Neil Brown got that thing rolling, and you said Neil Brown sucks. And then people started, for once you didn't get clipped, but they just started adding you on Twitter and saying you're an asshole.
I didn't get added on Twitter.
Yeah, you did. I saw it.
Where? I didn't see that.
On Ruffino and Joe show. Or no. They did it to AYS. They said AYS Sports knows what he's talking about. Joe, you suck for not loving West Virginia.
Whatever it was.
Back to the point, though. Do you think that you don't think that there's any chance whatsoever that they could upset any of those teams besides, like, you don't think they could upset a Utah? You don't think that they can upset a Kansas State?
I think it's plausible. I don't think that they match up well with Utah. I think Kansas State, that one is is a toss-up. I won't just fully hand that to Kansas State. There was a shot that Arizona could win that game. I really do think that they're probably going to beat Colorado.
Oh, I
They
agree with
probably
that.
will.
Here's the question: does Utah match up good for them?
Yeah. Because I look at.
We still don't know if Cam Rising's if he can return to the form that he was either.
If Utah comes into this game, as we know that they're always going to be having a really good defensive game plan. I hate to say this, but if you play really good defense and bracket coverage on McMillan, which is easier said than done because he makes jump ball catches on two guys. It happens a lot. I've posted a couple clips of him doing it. Double coverage doesn't totally work on him, but if you do a good job of neutralizing that, I think that's how you slow him down.
Yeah, look, we'll see. I think the Big 12 is going to be one of the more interesting conferences. I think that look, I'm going to continue to say this. I think it's up in the air.
It could be one of the most random teams that wins the conference.
Well, it could be Arizona.
Yeah,
because like let me tell you what goes on in my mind. Let me tell you how it goes in my mind. When I look at Arizona, okay, and I say, "Oh, Blake, can they beat Utah?" Okay, well let's look at that. Joe, what if Cam Rising doesn't come back to the place that he was? Right? Like, what if he's not the same guy that he was? A year off of football is a year off of football. Early in the season, but I can also say, look, you go into Utah and you play like on the road there, it's very difficult. God forbid that game's at night. Kansas State, it is what it is. Joe, I'm going to be honest. Outside of those two games, I think everything if everybody came to me and said that they're going to beat everybody else in their schedule, okay.
Well, okay, again, that's why I'm giving them a they're going to have a good record next year. They're going to have a good record because they're not exactly playing tricky opponents.
God forbid, though, Joe, if they're 10-2, then what?
Well, they go to the playoff and they might win the conference.
They're not, but we're not going to go down this rabbit hole. If you go 10-2, that's in a team of 9-3 in the SEC or Big Ten, stop. But I don't know if they're not competing for a Big 12 title game.
This is what's weird about the Big 12, as we've kind of talked about. There's really a realistic shot because a lot of these teams don't necessarily.
For a lot of people, we're going to get to West Virginia. I know you're going to clown this.
Yeah, they're not going to. What I was going to say though is that there's a shot that 4 teams could go 10-2. Like there's a potential for it. We laid out the groundwork for Kansas State, for Kansas, how it can happen. Utah, it's very realistic for it to happen because we know that they're just a really hard-nosed team that's always really freaking good. And then as we're talking about here with Arizona, if the depth issues don't play into it, they could end up being 10-2 as well.
You got to stop with the hate for the West Virginia people, man.
I'm not hating on them. I'm just being realistic.
I mean, they won the Duke's Mayo Bowl last year. Neil Brown got mayo poured all over him.
Okay, is that what the threshold is?
I mean, all I'm saying is, look, the 2 teams that they played last year are out. Like you don't like Joe, again, you're talking about teams that went 9-3 last year, and some of those losses that they had were against Texas and Oklahoma. And so it comes. So you mean you look at like West Virginia? I'm not saying West Virginia for an example. I'm just saying that there are a lot of teams that had a lot of pretty good records in the Big 12 last year, and a lot of those lost, like Kansas.
I mean, this is literally what I just said, though, was that there's a possibility for 4 teams to end up finishing 9-3 or 10-2.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm agreeing.
Wait, your tone made it seem like you were
disagreeing. Well, I'm just saying, like, you didn't want West Virginia in there, and I'm like, don't be a Rudy poo.
Because I'm not saying that West Virginia's bad. I just don't.
West Virginia.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. Bet online, where the game starts.